Welcome back. So nice to be with you all. Please feel free to unmute. This is really a conversation. So if ever you have any questions or comments, feel free to type them in the chat or to just raise your hand and we can explore it together. If I may invite Brother Jiang to unmute himself.
Yes, I can.
Very good. So grateful that you're here with us. Just a little by way of introduction. Brother Jiang has been supporting men, all people, of course, but also specifically men, through trauma, through mental health challenges for a while now. He's had a front row seat in this journey. So this is an opportunity to just see what he's discovered in his journey and learn and share. I also want to express that this is not a talking to, this is a speaking with. So we are here to really share and understand from each other. This is not a prescribing, it's a describing. It's describing what we're learning along the way. And this is not fixing anything, it's really to serve. In this case, particularly our brothers who are suffering. So having said that, welcome. Welcome, happy to be here.
Yeah, good to be here with everyone.
So let's begin with the beginning. I'd love to hear the Jiang story, how it began and what led you to serving trauma.
Yeah, I was born in Istanbul, Turkey, and I moved to Canada alone when I was 19 to go to university, but I knew I didn't want to go back to Turkey to live there. So that move already was an outcome of me asking very big questions about life and about who I am and where I want to live and what I want to do with my life. And but still at that time, I didn't know suffering that much, still as a teenager, 19. And then it hit me like a train, culture shock, a lot of anxiety with having to keep up my grades so that I don't lose my scholarship at the university. So a lot of this kind of stuff. And I started feeling depressed and anxious, so anxiety, depression. And the ending of my first real relationship happened around the same time, around age 21, in a sense. I started really tasting what it feels like to suffer. And I also knew I didn't want to live that way and that life was so much more, that there must be so much more to life than what I was going through. And so one big question I asked after the ending of that first relationship was, what is love? And I wanted to make that at the center of my life. I said to myself, I'm going to find this. And that led me much more deeply into spiritual practice. I was just interested before, and then I started going really deeply into it through meditation practice. And then as someone who was already studying psychology, and I knew I wanted to become a therapist, I started getting into psychotherapy as a client. And that really started opening a lot of things for me. A lot of things that I had no idea, because I had never been, although I was in an undergrad degree in psychology, I had never been on that seat of the client in a therapy office. So vulnerable, so difficult sometimes. And that started, and I started seeing the different layers of suffering within myself. And that started changing suffering into something a little different, like joy or excitement about life or things like that, peace. Yeah. I don't know how I'm doing with my answer, so if there's any other question, feel free to ask me.
Yes, just a wonderful setting of context. I appreciate that very much. It's funny how the greatest experts are experts as a side effect, not as a cause. The cause is suffering. And it's only when we have come out of that darkness that we feel that deep experiential compassion for those who are going through it. So I appreciate that insight. And you touched upon certain therapies and practices that helped you come into some form of realization and vulnerability and so on. So perhaps you can just speak about that a little bit.
Definitely. And, you know, that really brings us to the title of our thing tonight, emotions. And when I look back into my childhood, school years, life in the family, at home, there wasn't much space for emotions, really. And sometimes, let's say, a family member explodes with anger, but then we would never really talk about it. Like there's no repair, there's no, so things usually got left very confusing in a way that was very confusing for me as a little boy. And then as a maturing man, when I started therapy, I recognized first that an emotional awareness does simply not exist in my life. And it also didn't exist in the people around me. And so what's very clear to me now at age 35, after doing so much work on myself, and it continues, of course, but what's very clear, especially now with having this role in society, you know, as a psychotherapist, a counselor, is that we are not taught emotions, just simple as that. We're not taught. Our culture seems to fear them. We also have shame about them, especially us men. And we repress so much. And because of that, we get so disconnected from our depths, really. Because to me, emotion means the core of my being, our existential core. And once we repress that, or we are ashamed of that, in a sense, I find that we disconnect from what makes us human.
Mm.
And I understood after about 10 years of very strong spiritual practice and meditation that my emotions are here to stay. They're not going away. They are part of this mechanism that I call my humanness. And regardless of how awakened or enlightened in whatever way that I think I am or I might be one day, emotions are still going to be here to stay. They're not going to disappear. They're not going anywhere. Not with spiritual practice, not with therapy. So to me, I had to see very clearly, then what can I do with these emotions? Now that I know I cannot get rid of them, then what is the proper relationship with my emotions? And that's turning out to be a lifelong learning.
I just wish for the listener and viewer to understand that this is coming from somebody who has deeply studied psychology, mind sciences. How many Vipassanas have you done? You're like a
Many
many
10-day
many retreats. So when you say that you can't run from emotions, it comes with a fair deal of well-earned experiential confidence.
because I tried. I really tried.
Yeah. So the solution is not to get rid of emotion, seems to be. But let's go a little bit earlier than that. We suffer. Human beings suffer. I know. Obviously, you know, all genders suffer. I just find that from my experience as being in the wellness world, men have a more difficult time accessing their emotions, generally speaking, in terms of the nuance in vocabulary relating to emotions, feeling, you know, deeply confident enough to be vulnerable. You know, so where does this come from? Let's look at that for a moment. Is it just happens to be the consequence of being man, or is it something else that's at play here?
I mean, I think there are so much expectations on us men, so many expectations. And I also believe in the power of expectation. sometimes I might say, thank God people expect me to be maturing as an individual, because that can fuel my desire, my courage to step up to the challenge of living more maturely, for example, living more compassionately. But I think so many of the challenge that even as boys that we face, it's what I could call toxic challenge. Even at school, the way that I remember myself being motivated by adults, teachers, peers, for example, it's so toxic. There's so much unhealthy competition. And then what happens is performance anxiety. We get crushed under that. And so what happens is every time I try something new, I freeze. Why? Because all that wounding from the past, all the moments when I couldn't do it the way that it was expected, and I was shamed, say, by teachers in front of the classroom, that wounding comes in between even my joy of doing this thing and the actual doing of it. Suddenly that comes and performance anxiety settles and we freeze. So around that, there's also a lot of shame and heavy expectations of other people that we internalize. Little boys grow up thinking that crying is for girls. It's a girly thing, or so many other very derogatory terms that could be used for that. And so we are ashamed of our tears, for example, of being vulnerable, or so much pressure to know something. Right? So many of us men, we have masks. One mask might be the one who knows everything. So much pressure to know and intellectually know, which is to me one of the shallowest ways of knowing something. Because knowledge at the end of the day doesn't amount to much. So, but there's usually pressure, quite a bit of pressure to compete, to win, to be somebody. And I think we suffer because it's toxic challenge. It's not the kind of challenge that is just one step. And if I do that, then another step and another step. Then slowly we're learning in a healthy way how to be. But usually I think what we find in society is the kind of challenge that's way too much, way too soon. And developmentally, we get stuck there because we are frozen at that place, at that age. In therapy language, we can say there is inner child wounding, developmental trauma, right at that age where it was too much for us.
As you speak, I'm hearing a few themes arising. One, which you pointed to right in the beginning, was shame. And I just had vivid flashbacks of myself as a sort of upper middle class Indian family growing up in Assam, India. And the academic pressure was tremendous. And, I mean, just for a child to look good in society, you had to be somewhere near the top of the pyramid. Otherwise, society kind of looks down on the whole family. So it's almost like this unspoken agreement that parents have with their children. We'll sacrifice our life for you, and you get high marks. And I'm not disrespecting my parents. They were amazing. They did the best they could with what they knew and had. Nevertheless, I remember going into exams, literally having panic attacks, and my body breaks off in a rash. This extreme heat, and the exam doesn't go so great, and the marks are not so great. And I remember this comment I kept getting on my report card: does not live up to his potential. I got that over and over again as a child, and and the shame I felt. First of all, the fear of going into the exam and then getting the result and reading that comment over and over again, it really made an impact on me. So I see the shame part a lot. I was wondering if you could speak to shame.
And even a well-intentioned comment by the teacher on the report card or whatever can still be so shaming. So instead of writing a comment like that, a mature teacher just supports the boy, nothing else. Or goes up to him, hey, what do you need? Is there something you need from me? They will start a conversation with the parents. And the thing is, I'm also more and more careful with the way that I speak to people, not only clients, but in my private life as well, because I find it's so easy to not knowingly, let's call it unintentionally or unconsciously, shame the people we care about.
And as a parent, I happen to know it's effective. It's a very effective tool to get the kids to do what you want them to do, to behave in agreeable ways, to eat their, greens and go to bed on time. You put some shame in there, and fear and guilt are two other very effective tools. And you just we pay the price for that as a collective, years down the line, significantly.
Exactly. And that shame gets internalized. The shaming voices around me as a little boy, then they get internalized. At age 35, I still carry them in my head. Those people are not even around me anymore. It gets internalized in the form of the inner critic.
Mm.
Let's say I'm playing tennis, I miss one. Oh, you're such a loser, you can't even hit the ball. Well, the way that the person in my past would talk to me that way is not even around anymore. But what happened is that shaming from a young age, it gets internalized. And we carry this shaming, bully voice in our heads, the inner critic, wherever we go. And for so many of us, we never heal from that. That wound of unworthiness stays with us, and we are at war with the inner critic, and that war exhausts us, makes us depressed, anxious. So with inner work, we expose all this. We look at these places and we take apart all these different aspects of ourselves, and we start protecting our vulnerability against the bully that lives in our heads. Right? The bully is not only on the outside as people who are condescending or overpowering, but also like some kind of self-blaming, self-shaming energy that we carry within us.
Thank you. The other very powerful theme that I heard you saying was one of pressure. And I have three children. One of them is a teenager, one of them soon to be a teenager. And not only do they have the pressures that I grew up with in terms of, exams and everything else, there's also, the virtual world that is so strong in their lives that I did not have. And, they're being cool with the virtual friends. And nowadays it's so easy to just, text mean stuff or ridicule people, and it goes viral in their community and things like that. So there's all this pressure to sort of fit in and belong, with your peer group and be one of the cool guys and cool girls. So before that it was just, in school, but now it follows you in the evenings and the weekends and all over the place. Plus
And of
all
course,
the images they're bombarded by. So I just wish you could speak to pressure that we inherit as children and carried with us as adults.
and of course, at that age, social belonging, social acceptance is everything. For a teenager, as a developmental stage, belonging is the most important thing. How I'm seen from, how I'm accepted. Am I one of the in group? Am I outside? Of course, that's so important. And the wounding we get from those times, many of us, we never look at that as adults. So what happens, of course, our relationships suffer because that wounding infiltrates our relationships. So, but this pressure to be a certain way, of course, it goes against being authentic. It goes against being ourselves, being honest. And let's say someone came up to me and they said, Cenk, I'm not interested in anything you want to say, but just tell me in one phrase, one practice I can pick up from you, from your experience, that has the power to transform my entire life, even if I only kept that would be honesty. So pressure, shame, having to look a certain way, these things rob us from our honesty. Honesty with ourselves, honesty with other people. Because we live behind a mask that we feel we have to keep. To me, that's a definition of suffering. If I cannot be myself, then what I am being is artificial.
Wow, it's beautiful and powerful. So we talked
But of course,
about.
there's pressure. Sorry, or there's social pressure.
Mhm.
So one way or another, I think it's very helpful to come together like this, for example, like tonight,
Mm,
and slowly in our lives too, create little islands of authenticity. I like to call them islands because they are little spheres, little bubbles of safety and trust. We can create little communities. Even a relationship of two people is a community. Little islands of realness, genuineness, honesty, where we can even explore who we are. What does it even mean for me to be honest with myself? What does that even mean? We need space to explore what that means
mm.
because we don't know.
I've heard the comment before that, Bhaskar, all you say is very nice, but you live in a bubble. The rest of the world is not like that. And I recall responding, it's maybe true, but there's nothing wrong with the bubble becoming bigger, covering the whole world. So
Yeah.
uh, we spoke about shame and pressure and things like this. And the reality is, other genders also have these things, so what is it about men that prevents them from being honest with that?
Yeah, I think, a big part of it, the way that I see it, is just the lack of modeling.
Mm,
I didn't grow up with a lot of men around me who were just in touch with everything that they are and who were, whose tenderness was very showing. Well, my grandpa was like that. So, but um, so I saw it from him. But from other males, I really didn't. And of course, as we get older, what I observe since childhood is as people get older, there's two ways that they go. Usually either they become more rigid or they become softer. I want to become softer as I grow older because I've seen the people who have taken the rigid path, what kind of, how can I say, how so many difficulties that they have as they get older. So
mm,
much unresolved relationship struggles, so much people that they're not connected with anymore. So I hope for all of us, men, women, everybody, that we stay connected, even much more so with our tenderness and heart as we get older. And so as a man, if I'm not in touch with my vulnerability, tenderness, for example, the fact that I don't know everything, just humility is part of that, then my relationships are going to suffer automatically. Because let's say during a conflict with my girlfriend or close family member, best friend, let's say with the girlfriend, just to make it easier to talk about, let's say she says something that hurts me. I'm hurt now. I'm going to shut down. The moment I'm shut down, I'm no longer connected with her. And she's going to feel that. And she's going to feel lonely. Why is she feeling lonely? She is with me. There's two people. Why is she feeling lonely? Well, because I'm not there anymore, energetically speaking, emotionally speaking. I just shut down.
mm,
And so in a sense, I'm not showing up, not only for her, but I'm also not showing up for myself. And the question I can ask myself, do I really want to live that way? Or is it worth to take the risk and say, I feel hurt right now? Or it could be just one word, sad or hurt in that moment. She just said something. Maybe she's not aware. She shamed me. Something happened, right? We're all human. We make mistakes. And it got to me and I'm shutting down. Maybe I can even say shutting down. In that moment, I'm letting her in. To me, that's about vulnerability. And that is going to change everything.
your story reminds me of one of my clients from a while ago he was a top CEO of a massive company, one of the biggest in the world. He's retired now. And the way he speaks about it, he put on the shield of persona and just rampaged to the company, leaving behind a debris of broken relationships, unfulfilled promises, and just disconnected from his children. And he got to the top. And he's mature, older, and vulnerable, and he spoke very authentically that he felt so scared up there because they expect him to know everything, to answer everything, and he did not know. And he said there was a bunch of hyenas and vultures underneath just trying to knock me down, and I had to pretend that I had the answers when I didn't have the answers. So he had to keep that persona on just to survive in his position, because any vulnerability he felt he'd be eaten alive, because he was supposed to have all the answers. So
I can't imagine the anxiety that he was feeling. Just to keep that, right? Keep it going.
And now he's just doing his best to repair all the relationships he's damaged along the way. And he feels so hurt that he wasn't there for most of it, the meaningful relationships just. So I want to now maybe go into this word that you brought up a few times that seems to be so core, so central to your message, which is vulnerability. Yeah. And the way you spoke, it reminded me very much of Marshall Rosenberg's teachings of nonviolent communication, where you without blaming, or you just take ownership of your own emotional state and make that request. So I was wondering if you could speak about vulnerability and speaking in that authentic way.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I see it is, it's really about us being at home, at least a little bit, in our humanity. And to me, the humanity is the fact that we feel. It's very sad. We live in the world of I think, therefore I am. That's 99% of all our problems. Because to me, it's actually a little different than, it's more like the truth of it is more like, I feel, therefore we are. We are. Not only that I am also. I feel, therefore we are. Because feeling is never just me and my little life. The moment we feel, we open, that sense of feeling opens and connects us to all the other feeling beings. And so I think to feel is to be human, and to be human is to be vulnerable. We are living in an existence where 5 minutes from now, nothing absolutely is guaranteed. Nothing at all. Just that alone, right? The little blue-green ball floating across the galaxy that we might never fully comprehend. I mean, what do we really know at the end of the day, even with our extremely advanced science? What we call knowledge is just one drop in a limitless ocean. So this thing, I think, makes us a little humble, gazing at the stars, just recognizing, although tremendously precious, we are so extremely small at the same time. So I think that perspective, we start feeling that through vulnerability, through getting in touch with the fact that not only that I don't know, is that I don't have to know. And when we feel I don't have to know, all the pressure is lifted. I'm free. And now I can really learn. Because now I'm open. And I'm open not because I think I have to be. It's just I'm open as a cracked open person with a broken open heart, so to speak. Just living my life one day at a time, trying to do my best. And at the end of the day, that's really all we can do anyway. So this inner work is about taking away the extra suffering that comes at so many different layers on top of all this, and getting into the vulnerable core. And from that place, vulnerability is no longer weakness, but it becomes a source of strength. It's what makes us human. It's the way that I can connect to someone else from my pain. If I don't know my pain, how can I connect with someone else's pain? That's impossible. If I know my pain, then I can know my love, and that love is so strong. when it comes from that place, because that love is also connected with my own pain, that I know I can feel what the other person is feeling. If I'm not connected with my own pain, I cannot have empathy. If I don't have empathy, I don't have compassion. And once we feel connected through the heart, we feel very strong.
This might sound like a paradox to a lot of people who are unfamiliar with this territory, this notion that your vulnerability is your strength. Because the very reason you're vulnerable is because it makes you appear weak. When you speak about feelings and emotions, this is some sensitivity training mumbo jumbo, you know, that won't cut in my workplace, that won't cut in my football team or whatever it is. So if you could please speak to that some more, I find that's a very important point.
Yes. So I think what happens is there is a difference between pain and suffering. Pain says, my girlfriend left me. I'm hurting. Simple. It's still difficult. It's still unpleasant, very uncomfortable, so much pain, but it ends there. And I know that life can be lived that way because pain is inevitable. But suffering comes and says, my girlfriend left me. I don't know what to do. I don't want to live anymore. What will happen to me? I'm losing my shit. So suffering always makes everything turn into so much drama. So all the work that I do on myself, I offer, is about taking away the suffering and staying with the pain. Because although life is painful, it's much more manageable than our mind makes it look like. So if we can switch in a moment of difficulty from dramatization and losing ourselves in an emotion to actually feeling that emotion properly, actually, it's not the end of the world, but it fucking hurts maybe. Maybe it's so fucking difficult, but it's still not the end of the world. And life is still there. There's the sense that, yes, I'm really hurting right now, maybe in a very difficult moment, but life is larger than my pain. And as long as we are connected with that feeling, I think life can be so beautiful. But I think it takes a lot of practice also to stay there.
We're going to go into the practice soon. First, I am reminded of this wisdom tradition saying that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So you're making the suffering more optional. So this is not layering the pain with more what's called the anxiety cycle and drama of what ifs and what was.
Yeah.
You know, I was very moved in my life journey to discover nonviolent communication. I found it to be a beautiful way to just say, when I experienced this, I felt this because I have a need for this, and I wonder if you could do this. You know, that simple methodology has no blaming, shaming it, and there's an empowering responsibility behind it. Yet I also find that emotions, I'm generalizing, but for many men are a little bit like colors, you know, like a children with colors. They only know about 4 or 5 colors: red, green, yellow, blue, whatever, you know, like emotion, angry, happy, sad, excited, you know. And it's only when the body's screaming and shouting do you acknowledge there's actually emotion in the body. So
Yeah.
this might be a good segue into understanding what are the practices that bring more nuance into emotion, more nuance in vocabulary, and noticing the difference between, you know, fear and excitement, and, you know, at a level of sensation when it's subtle and not when it's so loud that is overwhelming and hijacks your entire system.
Yeah. And I think with some proper guidance, let's say in a men's group or workshop, that's the way that I offer this kind of work, or one-on-one with a therapist who is actually trained for this, right? So some training, I think, working with trained people is very useful when it comes to this, because unfortunately it's not part of our education system. So we need little islands of support and guidance, right? Little bubbles and groups where we can actually slowly begin to feel into these places in us that are going to feel uncomfortable, that are going to feel a little shaky, a little confusing, blurry. And it takes a little bit of time, but people understand this so quickly. When I tell someone, man or woman or any other gender, when I talk to them about healthy anger instead of aggression, for example, when I make the difference, they get it right away. And then once they understand that intellectually, they also know how the two of those feel in their being. They know that healthy anger feels vulnerable. Maybe I'm really heated, but I'm also vulnerable. I say to the other person, hey, stop shaming me. It really hurts. I might be a little heated when I say that, but I follow it up with, it really hurts. That's the vulnerable part. So that's the healthy anger. That's very different than, you asshole, get the fuck out of here. That's aggression. And I think we all know the difference between these two. We all know it. So more and more awareness, somatic awareness and intellectual awareness, and they start working together, feeling and thinking. And week after week, month after month, the awareness deepens very quickly.
Would you be comfortable with sharing some stories, perhaps, in your journey with working with men, perhaps in men's groups or one-on-ones, and just some of the methods used and what resulted from that?
Yeah, well, sometimes I get people to do role plays. Let's say a client comes and let's say he's very angry. He says, such and such thing happened with my supervisor yesterday, this and that. And I must say to him, let's say his name is John. Okay, John, okay, get up now, take a deep breath, turn to the side. Imagine your supervisor is in front of you. Clearly, this is imagination. It's the therapy session. What do you want to say to him? Go full out. Let's see it. And then that means they have safe space in which to be as angry as they are. That means they can be themselves. So we come back to honesty now. They can actually be honest with themselves and actually explore how they're feeling in a safe setting where there's a guide. There are guidelines as well. No hurting yourself, no breaking an object, no hurting someone else. And then they get to express their emotions. And they get to feel them, work through them, digest them, process them. So the work that I love, that I've been benefiting from for about 10 years, that I also give to clients and groups and workshops, is the kind of work that is very dynamic and it gets people moving. And I think when we move, then we get connected with the body, we get connected with energy, emotion, and things shift. So the way that I see therapy is it's very different than a conversation, or very different than the client talks and I just go, it's not that. It's much more dynamic and much more engaged.
Beautiful. Okay, so it's active. You get that emotion to
Very active.
embody that emotion, and so as the saying goes, you got to feel it to heal it, to really get in there and not just keep it intellectual. I'm going to open this up to Q&A very soon because I mean, we can go on like this.
I just want to say one more thing. Please. Yes, go ahead. Emotions, if we can think about them as energy in motion, emotions, they not only want to move within us, because when they get stuck, we suffer, but they also want to move us in our lives. If I feel healthy shame, my healthy shame is moving me into apologizing. If I feel healthy anger, that moves me to protecting what I need to protect. Maybe I need to say no to a friend of mine who's always so insisting about something. Maybe with my healthy anger, maybe I'm going to do some activism to protect human rights. So our emotions, they are here, not only that they need to move within us, but they need to move us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're very powerful.
So there it is. There's a man who was all blocked, and they've met you, Cenk, and they have done the work, and they have expressed their emotions, and they know how to connect with their emotion. I would like to hear your thoughts on, is the world ready to handle such a man? How does the world receive men who are emotionally open and vulnerable? Because those who are stiff, they're like, hey, this is working for me. If I lose this rigidity, I'm going to get eaten alive. or
Yeah,
I'm surviving, but if I go there, it's too painful. I don't want to go there. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. So I'm just wondering,
exactly.
how are vulnerable men perceived in society? And is there some work to be done there by all genders?
Yeah, I think we can all do activism about that, just like anything, right? The how can we say, the emerging, the leading edge of cultural evolution always needs pioneers. And for pioneers, nothing is ever easy. But the thing is, I know in my heart that the world has been ready for this for a very long time. And the world has been needing it for a very long time. And women want that from us for a very long time. So it's time for us to rise up to the challenge and face all the fears. And again, find communities where it's safe to do that. It's not my responsibility as a therapist or as a man even to convince people that they should, or to change the world. Not at all. But the thing is, I express this because I cannot do otherwise. I express this because this is who I am. Whoever enjoys the message comes automatically. So it's not like we are here to, let's say, change everything, or that we have to as a burden. It's just that we live life in the way that we would like to, that's close to our heart. And whoever else is willing to enjoy that journey and be a part of it will be there anyway. So it is, of course, difficult, but just like anything. And we can face those fears, and we can connect with support so we don't feel alone in it. And I think the world needs this tremendously. I mean, in so many ways, in terms of inner work, the world can go into very negative very quickly. It will be the number of people who are connected with their hearts that can make a difference. And that's always been the thing that's always made a difference. So if people choose to get connected with themselves more deeply, I think that's a beautiful thing to do for themselves and for the world. But not that anyone has to do it.
It's free will. A practice that has deeply impacted me is Vipassana. And of course, the practice itself can take you all the way to self-realization. So I'm shortchanging the practice by saying this, but nevertheless, it has helped me become more sensitive to body sensations. So I feel it in my body when it's whispering, so it doesn't have to shout. So very often when I feel that anger inside of me, I just the seeing of it sort of removes this poison. And my
Yeah.
critical mind will say, this is not the time to answer or interact. The critical mind will say, or say, so I can now, I have the external information, but since the Vipassana, which is essentially at the basic level, observing body sensations, I have my internal information as well. So having both information just gives me more option how to navigate that situation. So I found that to be a very powerful tool for me. And I'll preface this by saying, when the sensation is less than 7 out of 10, Vipassana works very well. When I'm able to observe it, we are becoming it. But of course,
Yeah.
recently, when my dear friend passed away, I had two massive breakdowns. I was totally taken away by this tornado of a sensation. And I'm down on the floor, crying, feeling dizzy, nauseous, just out of control. The emotion had completely taken me over. It was above 7 out of 10. So that's when I just somehow managed to pick up my phone, call a friend to hold space, because it was too much. My practice was not able to handle that much emotion. So
And
I'm
I don't
wondering
think we are, and I don't think we are meant to do it alone, right? That's what we find. Emotion is very relational reality. So I think we find we don't have to do it alone. In fact, we are never alone. We never exist in a vacuum. There's a part of us that might feel that way, but we are interdependent with the entire universe all the time, including all the beings, all the beings, in the sense that let's say someone is born and they already lost their parents. the influence of their parents will still be there. Now, what they're influenced by is the parents' absence. So still, they're bound to their parents, because there's no way that a human being comes to existence without two being in the game, right? So it's just that we open to the reality as interdependence. And what a beautiful thing. We don't have to make a problem out of it in any way whatsoever. We belong to humanity in a way. We belong to our friendships. We belong to our relationships. Everything exists through relationship. I can only know myself through my interactions with other people. I can only become myself through my interactions with other people. There is no other way.
Interdependence. What I'm hearing you saying is, you know, when those dark thoughts and emotions arise, reach out for support. We are here for each other. And I tell you, the friend I reached out to hold space for me, he feels so grateful I reached out to him. So thank you for calling me. I'm here to serve you in this way. It feels so good to help somebody. So I now wanted to just land a little bit and open. Please unmute yourselves, and if any of you have any questions, comments, thoughts, Cenk is all yours.
Yeah, please feel free to ask questions. And feel free to turn on your video if you want, or just in the chat you can write.
I wanted to ask you, how does your family react to your enlightenment in a lot of ways, the way that you express yourself? How do your brothers and sisters, or like, are they uncomfortable with you being so? First of all, I thought you're amazing for somebody 35. You're very articulate, and you've obviously done lots of work on dealing with your emotions. But I'm interested to know your family, your culture. How are they reacting to you being sort of a Renaissance man?
You know, I think it's been difficult, especially for my parents.
Yeah.
But at the time, there was a part of my healing journey where I was challenging them quite a bit. Hey, like, why did you do it this way when I was 10 years old, or all this, that? Yes, when I was doing that with a bit of let me say, it wasn't always very healthy anger. So that time, I know that it wasn't easy for them. But that time is over, and our relationship is only deepening. And I am tremendously grateful for them to be open. And I know that they've been enjoying getting to connect with me more deeply now.
Is there a place for forgiveness in such a situation?
For sure, yeah. Yeah, but you see, what I found is there's a time for forgiveness. We don't want to, in the name of being spiritually correct, sometimes this happens. We pressure ourselves that I need to forgive right now, right away. Healing first. So feeling first, and then healing, and then forgiveness. So I think we need to honor there are different stages. We cannot rush that process.
I think what's really nice, Bhaskar, when you were saying that you were really devastated and you called a friend. I don't think there's that many men that have friends they could call to talk about anything that's like on an emotional level. I think that's a problem with men right now, is that they don't have any place. Like, women do have the benefit of having lots of women friends to discuss their emotions with, and feeling like they're not enough or ashamed. They can actually have those conversations, but I don't think men, you're very lucky to have. I think men, if they have one or two friends they can talk to on levels besides talking about, current events and sports, and you should consider yourself very lucky. Mm-hmm. And to talk about real things,
And sometimes, if I can say something to that quickly, sometimes one or two is enough. And at the same time, what I find is if I don't risk vulnerability with a new person, for example, I can never know. I can never know whether or not they are either ready or willing to meet me there.
Yeah.
So sometimes all that it takes is one man to risk it. One man to say, hey, can you listen to me now for a little bit? I need help. People can surprise us. I find that people surprise us sometimes.
I have a question. Sorry for my accent. Do you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a lot of men in your practice that go see you? Is it mostly men or women?
These days, it used to be mostly men. These days, it's actually 50-50.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's good.
I like it.
Yes, I love it. No, I'm just saying because my reality where I live in the country now. I used to live in Montreal, and in the country, if I thought of somebody who was even remotely close to what you're saying, you're living right now, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I don't see that. A few hippie friends maybe, but the rest, no, it's very male, tough and all that. So,
And
yeah.
sometimes those communities, they need it the most because it's like a desert. It's like a very dry desert. Even one drop is needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can relate. My experience has been for all these years, the numbers haven't changed very much. For when it's group classes, general open to the public, it's predominantly women, 70% plus. But when it's privates, one-on-one, there are more men for the private. Maybe it's the way I teach. Who knows? I don't do the whole, rah kind of teaching. That's not my way. But I find that when it comes to the private classes, I find men are more open these days. And also when men actually open up, I find there's a tremendous depth and sincerity and distance to that. It's very, very beautiful to see, to have a front row seat on that.
And it really is the hero's journey. It's a very noble thing. So I think the fact that it requires courage and it asks the best that we have for us to bring that forward is just such a beautiful challenge and I think there's something very male to want to rise up to a good challenge. That it brings out the hero in us, the healthy warrior.
It's the inner warrior this time. Yeah. Know thyself, as a hero's journey. I wanted to ask you, because we are running to the end of the session. Are there any questions pending? Anybody else?
I don't have a question because I have to go. I just want to say, Cheng, thank you for the beautiful work you're doing. Thank you for your beautiful heart and your commitment and what you're holding on this planet. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're welcome. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
My last question that I have on my side is, what would be your greatest wish for mankind?
To me, that question.
Yes.
Well, for us men to really step into all that we are. All that we are, all of it, the high and the low, everything. Like the journey is not only up and down, but also sideways, like to expand and to inhabit and to embody everything that we are. The guts, courage, power, the heart, vulnerability, love, compassion, the clarity of seeing, having vision, being able to lead people, for example. So the whole thing, like a well-oiled engine, the whole thing, an engine with all its pistons firing. I think we all deserve to live that way, because then life is so much more exciting. There's no one dull moment. Everything is beautiful. Everything is an adventure. I think we are here to live that way.
That's beautiful.
I love that, because you're also celebrating just being a male too. in that way? Is it having your emotions, but being, you know, I raised a boy and a girl, and they are very different. And I don't think I did that much different with them, raising them, but they just turned out to have very different. And there are traits that we can't help. Maybe they're genetic traits. People I know argue if it's genetic or you know, learned or culture. But so I think that's very, very nice. I think that's what I was going to ask Charlo before we go. Charlo, in Mexico, are you? Is it a very macho thing, or do you have friends that you could talk about your emotions? It's like Spanish people seem to me to have more emotions.
Well, thank you for the question. Typically, guys, like they mingle, they bundle, they get together. So there's a group of friends. Usually it's girls and boys. And there is this very cultural thing of guys. I don't know if I would call it macho, but there's definitely the macho culture. It's a very traditional way of seeing the world, I guess. But I don't know exactly what's going on today because I have been here in Canada for a very long time. When I was a child, yeah, definitely, I totally identified with Cenk when he described his own personal life growing up in Turkey. It's very difficult. There's all that peer pressure, all that suppression of emotions, feelings, and you know, there is. I also resonate a lot with when Cenk said that at some point he mentioned that you have to be yourself. You have to be sincere and honest with yourself first and before anything. And I would say that that is a big challenge when we are manifesting or living under like all those programmings or preconditioning in terms of the culture, the prevailing culture. And it's very difficult, I find, because imagine a man, whatever age, maybe a teenager or older, is feeling an emotion, a strong emotion, and then he's trying to, there's this kind of like inner conflict. He's trying to understand what's going on, and he's trying to express that emotion about whatever happened. And then whenever he opens up, he feels all of these crushing cultural conditioning that tells him, no, you don't do it. That is not the way a boy is supposed to, or boys don't cry, or this and that. So the moment naturally this person, this individual is trying to open up, the almost immediate reaction from his surroundings is like an opposite but stronger sometimes effects. And so what happens to all of us, and it's happened to all of us at any moment or another, it's like you withdraw. You're like, no, I don't want to go there. I'm too tender. I am too vulnerable. I am, so it's a big challenge. It requires, I don't know what. It definitely requires.
I think
it requires a lot of honesty, a lot of courage, and I'm speaking of my own experience. It takes a lot of courage, and realizing that this is just. It will take a few attempts, but eventually you will be able to pierce through. At first, it's going to be very hard, very painful. It's not going to make sense. Maybe you're going to think that it's counterproducing. I don't know why. But I think we've all been through different degrees or experiences of pain, trauma, suffering. But we also know that once I like Bhaskar's way on vision of things when he says, what are you good at? The more you practice something, the better you get at it. So this is, I don't want to oversimplify it or to put an overly reductionist vision, but I think that just like with everything else, any sport, any discipline, we have to be honest and sincere with ourselves, like you, Cenk, very well put it. And we have to push. You have to keep pushing if you want to go through it. Otherwise, we're always going to be like, oh, the water is too cold. And then you change it for hot water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
True.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I it's interesting how Chalo, there you're, born in Mexico, I'm born in India, Cenk is born in Turkish, sort of different contexts, yet the content seems to be the same, of our experience. I wanted to just land by just taking a bird's eye view of our times, that the image of man, I find, is taken a beating, in society. I mean, men have been reduced to either this alpha male jock or this Neanderthal or something. It's just horrific, what we're seeing as men being represented as. So I just wanted to honor and thank you, Cenk, for bringing out the best in man, the nobility
Yeah.
and the beauty and the grace that the masculine also has. And I can't share highly enough that we need to support each other in bringing out the best from each other and from ourselves. So just to land, I'd love to hear any final thoughts you may have, and let us know where we can find you, reach you.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that we did this, and thank you, everyone.
Thank
So
you.
my website is cenkmadelon.com, but Cenk is spelled with a C, C-E-N-K, madelon.com. And I recently moved to Montreal, and now I'm really excited that I'll be doing in-person things. So this weekend, there's a workshop coming up. On the 31st, Sunday, there's a workshop coming up in person in yoga studios. And I'm also starting a few men's groups. All that is on the website. Feel free to contact me. I do individual sessions as well, couples work. So all that is on the website, and I love talking about all this. So thanks for giving me the opportunity, and thank you, Bashkar, as well.
Let's end as we began, with a little bit of silence to.
What are the men's groups, Cenk? What are you? Where are they? Are they going to be in person, or are they online?
They will be in person. If there's enough demand, I'm going to do another one online. But for the moment, it's in person in Montreal.
And you'll post them on your Facebook page, I imagine, when you do something online?
Yeah, exactly. So on the website at the very bottom, there is a newsletter. You guys, if anyone wants to subscribe, I can. I'll have your email address to send the news. And on the website under group work, that shows everything that's happening in Montreal.
I imagine that the men that need it most are not the men who sign up to attend.
Yeah, that's right, Karen.
Well, the people who need it the most, they also need to be inspired by people who are already doing the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think now with people working from home, I just had an example of a patient who's probably in his 40s, and he's working from home. He's a computer coder or something, he's doing something very cerebral, but I'm sure he's very lonely. And I'm sure there's, at least going to work, you had somebody to talk to, and now you're working from home. You're not going to talk about your emotions when you're on Teams with your coworkers, if you are. And I just think, wow, this is something that is going to be even more of a problem now with people working mostly from home. And, they're using the excuse, well, it's easier, I don't have to commute. But really, it's really isolating.
It is, and I've also been enjoying doing therapy for one-on-one sessions through Zoom, because then whoever wants to, then I can support them. They don't have to be in Montreal. So that also expanded what's possible for us. Yeah.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from anybody? Okay, let's take our seat. Effortless, elegant posture. Now I invite you to drop the awareness to the region of the heart, the chest plate, if you will, the sternum, as if you're breathing through this area. And perhaps an inch or two in front of the heart. Metta is the practice of loving kindness. May this time together and all that was shared directly or indirectly benefit all living beings. May peace prevail on this beautiful earth. Green blue ball floating through infinite space. Loka samasta sukhinam bhavantu. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.